Today marks the 20th anniversary of the LA riots. I was here in LA at the time, and what a crazy, chaotic time. These are images from the LA riots, and to all those people that were affected, and family members and people that were lost loved ones, I feel so sorry for that event, because it was just unbelievable time being here in LA. I'm Kevin Perteete, and I'm going to explain to you and tell you things that occurred in these riots that were never reported on mainstream media. They were blacked out. I've not been able to find anything on the internet regarding some of the events. And it's just amazing to me at how powerful these people who are in charge are able to control and keep these things hidden from the public, and especially after all these years. So if anyone finds any of the information that I'm going to talk to you about, I would love to hear about it. And of course, you can always hit me up on YouTube and let me know what you got, or how you came about it, or what have you. Alright guys, I'm Kevin Perteete, and I want to talk to you about the riots of 1992 in Los Angeles, California. This is the 20th anniversary, April 29th, 2012. Riots being April 29th, starting to 1992. Let me go ahead and tell you real quickly, and I want to try to make this video as short as possible, because I know I talk a lot and people tell me I do, and it's too long. So let me make this as quick as possible and say this. The riots of 1992, there were many things that occurred in these riots that were never reported in the mass media, and that you would have never heard before. I've tried to find them on the internet. They've been totally blacked out, and I've never heard, only a few people at that time, 20 years ago, talking about these events and things. Let me go ahead and explain it to you really quick and say this. You must understand that there has been and is a worldwide conglomerate of power families who are trying to control and create a new world order, and who are orchestrating events and have been doing this for the last, it actually goes back hundreds of years, but especially over the last, 50 to 75 years. Anyway, the LA riots was no exception to this. This was a government orchestrated event, and let me try to explain to you why some of it, or why it was, by talking about some things. It was no accident that the trial of the 4 officers accused of beating motorist Rodney King was transferred to a 98% white county, where at the time 2,000 retired police officers resided, Simi Valley. It was no accident that the instructions to the jury by the judge, which everybody ignored, people blamed the jury. It wasn't the jury's fault, only that they were guilty of ignorance, and that they did not understand that they did not have to obey the dictates of the judge, but they could decide not only the guilt of the accused, but also the guilt of the law. This is, or was, one of the safeguards that was given to us in the Constitution of the United States of America, to make us sure that if the government passed laws which were against the morals and wishes of the people, that the jury could nullify those laws by simply voting against the law, against the instructions of the judge, voting their conscience. The instructions to the jury was this. After the defense had made their case, and a very good one, I might add, that police officers are instructed in their training that if they order someone to assume the position, put your hands behind your head or up against the wall. If that person does not comply or do it, they have to use whatever force necessary to make them comply with that order. The instruction to the jury by the judge was if they found that the defendants were acting within the parameters of their training, that they could not be found guilty. The fault is with the judge, whose name was Stanley Wisberg, and the ignorance with the jury and the American people. Several days before the verdict, the mayor of Los Angeles, Tom Bradley, gave a speech and said that the city of Los Angeles was prepared in case of a not guilty verdict and were expecting trouble and had elaborate plans to deal with it. Police Chief Gates gave a speech and said that they had plans for many years, ever since the Watts riots of 1965, to deal with insurrection, riots, and looting, and that monies was set aside to pay the necessary extra forces that would have to be called back to duty or back to work to deal with the riots or insurrections or whatever. But yet no police were mobilized that day. The leaders of LA and Congress and of the civil rights movement and our government actually made inflammatory statements, which were actually in fact permissions to riot, permission to revert to a state of anarchy, permission to loot. And that was inexcusable in my opinion. I understand that at the time we were upset, people were outraged, okay? But that's not the way that we had to go about doing it, okay? And to a degree I understand, but my point is this: if we were going to do that, then we should have been prepared to go all the way. You take up arms and we all come together and we all go and march and get rid of these SOBs that are in office, that are part of this whole conspiracy New World Order plan to overthrow this country, to bankrupt us as individuals, as families, as the middle class of this country. So that's what I have to say about it. There's a whole other part to this that people have never heard. There were many eyewitness testimonies that many of the raging fires that consumed buildings all at once were not set by a few people with a little bottle of gasoline, not set by people with a match and a lighter and a piece of paper. The whole buildings went up at once. They were professional jobs done by fire bombs. There were many, many eyewitness testimonies who saw men dressed as police officers who rode in white vans setting many of the fires. Also, people who were listening to their scanners at the time heard police arrest many people for impersonating police officers. Now, I personally have had an acquaintance at the time who came up to LA a couple weeks later who said he heard on the scanners that police were arresting gang members dressed as police officers. Now also too, I don't remember, it's just like I said, these are stuff I'm going over 20 years ago, tapes and people who spoke and articles I've had collected since that time. But I remember right, I remember one old black lady at the time in South Central LA saying that she was on her porch and she saw vans go by and shooting off fire bombs into the buildings. Okay? Also too, and like I said, these are things I can't say to you for sure because it's just stuff that I remember people speaking about at the time. I remember, and I'm not sure who said it, but right when the verdicts, after the verdicts were read, on the corner of Florence and Normandy there where the riots started, there were 4 white gentlemen standing on that corner. And they were shouting racial slurs. And a few moments later, that's when everything, all hell broke loose. And, you know, the blacks started coming up, from what I understand, on the streets saying something, whatever. And then that's when the rioting started. And they grabbed poor Reginald Denning out of his truck. And I remember seeing that and thanked the person who went in and saved him. Because he was a white guy. He had nothing to do with it. He's just working, doing his job. So that's what I'm saying. A lot of the anger was aimed at people who believed in the same thing you did, who would have joined hand in hand with you in the corruption of what's going on. But we saw so much of that, and it's so sad. And for all the lives that were lost, there was over 60, exactly, I'm not sure, 63, something like that, people who were killed during the insurrection and riots. And I feel bad to this day for the families and friends of those people who lost their lives during that time. And also too, if my memory serves me correct, if I remember right, like I said, I'm not 100% sure, this is over 20 years ago, remembering this. Activist Dick Gregory, you know, who was an activist, comedian, and you know, entrepreneur, who was real popular, you know, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you know. Dick Gregory, if I remember right, was saying that after the riots, there were many people missing. Now, I'm not sure if he was just normal people or like people who were homeless on the streets, but if I remember right, he did some type of speech or something in which I think I saw it. I wasn't there, I don't think, but I remember watching it somewhere, and him saying that there's been, I don't know, hundreds or even some, I'm not sure, hundreds or thousands of people that were missing after the riots. Now, I know for sure that the government, you know, takes people and experiment on them, you know, off the streets and different things like that for experiments. So I don't know what happened to the people, but with Guantanamo Bay and all these different things that are going on, who knows? But it's been a blackout on the internet. I can't find anything, of course, about the firebombs or the men that police were arrested, because there was confusion from what I understand. The police, but they were being, from what I remember, were giving orders to let them go. Do not stop them. And it was confusion because they didn't know what was going on. Here's people dressed up like police officers who weren't shooting firebombs. So if anybody knows anything about it or remembers anything about it, hit me up on YouTube, you know, and let me know, because I'm very curious to hear, because I've never really talked about this stuff in 20 years. And as the time goes on, I'm going to make many videos on YouTube about many different events and stuff. But this is just the beginning. Then came, you know, Waco, Texas, the Branch Davidian whole thing, fire, Waco, Texas, Randy Weaver case, Oklahoma City bombing, and then of course 9/11. And these things are orchestrated so they can bring about new laws that just tighten the chains up on us as Americans. And the Patriot Act, all these different things that have been passed, and, you know, government having the right to, you know, phone tap you or, you know, arrest you without charges, and all these different things are all a part of the plan of these elite groups that are creating this new world order. So anyway, that's enough on that, and I just wanted to share that bit of information with people out there. Thank you.